Hello, I'm Dr. Leila Ghoshi with Validity Magazine, and I am so pleased to welcome today Marguerite Dabaie, a Palestinian comics illustrator. Did I say that
You actually, yes,
correctly?
you did. Thank you.
And a very accomplished person who has illustrated several types of work, uh, whether comics. I think I've noticed marketing as well, and currently um, has a comic titled Legends in the Heights, which we will talk about later. So, welcome, Marguerite.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. And would you like to say a few words about yourself as well?
Oh, sure. So, um, I uh, I'm a cartoonist and illustrator. I have been doing this for a while. I'm also an editor. So I've edited for quite a few Palestinian-based organizations, mostly. I'm based in Brooklyn, and I love drawing. Like I really love drawing. So
So by editor, do you mean editor of comics and illustrations, or editing as in writing?
good question. Right, like a copy editor, proofreader, that kind of thing.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right. Oh, that's great.
yeah.
So, yeah, and did because you mentioned you are a cartoonist, so is there a difference in terminology? But if I, like when I say comics illustrator, is that different than a cartoonist, or what are the terms people normally use? I guess that's my question.
So there's a lot of contention about that, and people will get into full arguments about that. Personally, I'm not picky about the terminology. You can, comic artist, cartoonist, it's fine with me. Illustrator, I mean, because I am illustrating the work. That's all. I'm honestly pretty open with all of those terms. It's totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was going to be one of my first questions is how do you describe um, what you do? Because I have heard different terms, and how long have you been doing this?
Okay, let me think. So I started officially being a cartoonist, like officially doing it in 2006. And I first started with my first full blown, like not a mini comic that I photocopied and gave out, was the Hookah Girl, which I self published, 2006 and 2007. Um, I would say, bef- but I started drawing comics. I actually remember I started drawing comics when I was 12 years old. And I was reading comics long before then. Um, and I was reading, I was reading a combination of newspaper comics, um, Najee Ali comics. So I was reading like anything with Handala in it. And then I was reading manga, like a lot of manga. I was fortunate in that I grew up in San Francisco, where it was I openly had access to a lot of manga straight from Japan. It was not translated. I didn't
Mhm.
care. I was just like, this is amazing. Um, and this is before that there was like the big push for manga in the US. So I read, like I voraciously just took all this stuff. Um, and I just had an epiphany one day where I was just like, if I were to draw this, I would draw it like this. Wait, I can't actually draw this. Why can't I? I'll just draw it. And then I just started drawing comics, and that was kind of it. And then I just decided like I was going to draw comics, and it was like a really easy. It was the easiest job decision of my life. It obviously has its difficulties. I wouldn't say it's an easy job to do by any means, but in terms of what my heart was telling me to do, it was super just like, I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm doing it. And that was it. So
in the beginning, would you say that was your work autobiographical? Because the Hookah Girl is
yes.
autobiographical in many ways. And so would you say you started out that way, or did you try to, say, replicate other forms that you had seen?
So no. Short answer is no. Long answer. So I ended up drawing the Hookah Girl because of um, the political climate at the time, especially. So it was not long off the heels of 9/11, and I was, you know, pretty cognizant of my Arabness, but it just really went into full, like a lot of Arabs in the U.S. Like it just went
Yeah.
into freaking overdrive after 9/11. And I just really was becoming hyper aware of how much misrepresentation and interpretation there was of Arabs in the media. And then I just said, you know what, I have a responsibility to say something. And so a lot of the Hookah Girl was written. I was really angry writing a lot of it, honestly. And I think I feel like part of that comes out where it does get a bit sarcastic in places. And I feel like that sarcasm was the base of the anger. So it was a very specific, like, very specific reason for why I did it. When I first started drawing comics, it was when I was in that 12, 13 time. And like I said, I was reading a lot of manga. I especially loved like sci-fi and fantasy manga and that kind of thing. So I was actually, I drew, it's never going to see the light of day, but I drew 100 pages of this comic at the time that was about these anthropomorphic people. They were like unicorn and dragon, and I love mythology. I love mythical creatures and stuff. So,
Mhm.
Unicorn, dragon, phoenix people, like all these kinds of mythological creatures that are like human, and they're walking around having adventures in this fantasy world. And, yeah,
Well,
I
I,
mean,
I think it should see the light of day.
who knows? Like maybe if I made an updated version, not
Uh-huh.
not that. Um, it's very much of the time. It's very much a 90s manga looking thing. But I did draw like 100 pages, so it's pretty cool for being that age and doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Well, in regard to the Hookah Girl, I think your introduction, well, the whole thing to me is like a snapshot in time because I do
Yeah.
think of 9/11 and just just the climate
Yes.
for that time period. But if I have it correct, you said you self-published in 2007, but I think the issue I have is that 2017. Here's the issue, and I'll hold it up here.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, it's either, I think it's 18. I think it's 2018.
Mhm.
And the trajectory for that, okay, so basically what had happened was that
Mhm.
I had originally self-published the comic, and
Mhm.
I thought, I want to try to pitch this to publishers because I really think it's good enough to try.
Yeah.
And I came across a lot of it was pretty discouraging. I came across a lot of publishers and agents who would say, like, you know, I had a lot of like, personally, I think it's great, but we're never going to publish this. Like, that was really the climate, especially at that time. It was especially at a time um, where saying, I mean, I call it the P word, like saying the P word was just an absolute taboo. Like, cannot, I still don't
Yeah.
think it's good now, but I think it's a little bit slightly better than it was back at that time. So it really, and this is, I went to, um, I went to art school. I went to art school, and throughout my time there, I was told many times that, draw whatever you want. Like, as long as it's good, it's going to make it out there, people, and to come across that, it was very, very discouraging for me. It really was my first lesson in, okay, like, there's, even well-intentioned people, even within well-intentioned people, there is still going to be that wall. There's still going to be the prejudice. And I need to figure out a way to go around that wall, because I'm not going to stop drawing comics. Like, this is it. This is what I want to do. So I self-published for many, many years. And, I did okay, did the best I could in terms of distribution and things like that, but I'm one person. That current edition, that 2018 edition, was published by Rosarium, and they're a small press publisher. They're a small press publisher, and he really, when I say he, I mean like the intake guy. he really, made a point where he was just like, oh yeah, this is going to make people angry, I'm going to publish it, which was really nice of him. And I'm thrilled that it has a place to live, honestly. And when he took it, I did add a couple of extra stories and that introduction. That's sort of like a explanation that it's a intro story that says how. Oh, thank you. There it is.
I'll put it on the screen.
Cool. Yeah. So, and it includes an intro story that just basically explains, like, hey, some of these stories are kind of older. That's because it was sitting on a shelf for, over 10 years and it couldn't get published, and this is why, and here it is, So it's been a really long kind of heartbreaking for me. Like, it was sort of my heartbreak book, I like to call it. But I don't regret it. I'm glad that I said what I wanted to say in it. And it really helped. I'm trying to think of how to word this. This is oftentimes the advice that I give to people when I talk about making art and making comics and things like that. Of course, you have to worry about saleability and all that stuff. It's a very difficult industry to get into, but I'm also very, very strongly for doing the work that you really want, like that you feel like that you feel a strong connection to. Because if you just think about the market, I don't understand why you're doing this work, because it's just, there are no major riches in comics. I mean, you're doing it for the love, and eventually I do think that people will find you. It might take time. It might you're going to hear a lot of opinions from all these different kinds of people, but eventually I do think that it is worth it. And I feel like in the long run, I've talked to so many great people who genuinely connect with the work, and that's the point for me. I mean, that really is the point. Otherwise, I would do something that I do not care at all about. So, yeah, it's all been good.
I totally understand. And just to talk about things I connected with, first, I love the concept of the Hookah girl being this mysterious person that you would see at was it a carnival, like an Arab American or Palestinian American carnival, where hookahs were available. So I thought that was so cool. But I also liked how I think in the book you mentioned using the word Palestine is a political act. And I related to that because even back especially back in the late 70s and 80s, when I was first becoming more aware, it could barely be published in the newspaper. You could not publish that word, and so that's something that resonated with me. And then, so the sense of alienation that you mentioned, but also the stealth era and by that, well, I'll let you tell me what the stealth Arab meant. I have thoughts on what it means to me, but
Like, okay, so I actually do. I also need to explain an addendum to that particular story.
yeah.
But so stealth Arab, meaning that. So I'm half Palestinian.
Mhm.
My other half is mostly European, mostly English,
Uh-huh.
and so I even so I look like, I don't look like what the Western depiction of what a Palestinian is at all.
Mhm.
Even though nowadays we are getting used to the idea in the media, like we have like a Tamimi and um, other Palestinians who, I mean, sometimes Palestinians can look very like blonde hair and blue eyed and that
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
thing. Yeah,
yeah.
so it's just like they run this gamut. They are. Palestine is on the Silk Roads. A lot of people trekked along
Mhm.
there, and so DNA mixed a lot. And so this makes total sense to me. Um, but I've gotten that a lot where, for example, my last name, people think it's sometimes Dubois or something like that, and so people will think I'm French,
Mhm.
and kind of, they'll be like, "Oh, you must be French." No, I'm Palestinian. What? um, so that's a common thing that happens with me. But the stealth Arab story, um, it's about how I took a DNA test, and it said that I was like a crap ton Italian, and I was like, what the hell? Because that's like nowhere in my family history whatsoever. And it said I was like a tiny bit, um, like a tiny bit Arab, mostly Italian, and it was sort of in the story of me, I kind of reconciling with that I was like, well, and like I just said, like this, it's on the Silk Road, a lot of people migrate over there, and it doesn't really matter in the long run because DNA doesn't really trump cultural identity when you, like,
Right.
my family, I know my family's lived there for, my family was in Ramallah for generations, so either way,
Mhm.
you know but um but anecdote, or not anecdote, footnote, um so maybe like a year after I wrote that story, I got contacted from 23andMe, and they were just like, haha, just kidding, actually all of that is Arab.
Wow.
So they were so now my results are just like, they're just like, bam, 50-50 English, like Levantine. Bam, like that's it. No, nothing else is in my chart. And so I'm just like, oh, okay, well, you messed up, but cool. I mean,
I've even wondered if it was, well, we will have no way of knowing, but was it a mess up or was it just another example of um, a lack of understanding of the region? I mean, that, you know,
yeah. So yeah, okay. So I've been, okay. Um there are articles about this online, and I actually did interview for a couple of articles about this, about that. It's sort of this, okay, uh generally speaking, the argument is that they might not have had a big enough sample of Arabs to really compare, which is, and I get it, it's like
that
involving,
makes
you know,
sense.
yeah, it makes sense. And honestly, part of the reason why I decided to do it is because I wanted to see what they would do with my DNA. So it was all interesting anyway to me. I wasn't
Yeah.
super like distraught or anything. It was just sort of this experiment. Um, so there was that, but then there's also this other side to it, where me and other Palestinians who have taken the test, they'll say that we're Lebanese and not Palestinian. And it's like, we know we're Palestinian. We know where our family's from specifically, and they'll say that we're from like specifically, they'll say, well, like, we're from North Lebanon. So, and there's this whole, I can't remember what it is right now, but they have this whole reasoning behind why they won't say you're Palestinian or whatever, but it's kind of BS-y to me. There was someone from Haaretz who wrote an article on this. So
that is really bizarre because at the
yeah,
very least they could say something like from the region of,
yeah,
from the region of Jerusalem, or from the region, or from this geographic number,
yeah. It's
some,
agreed.
yeah, yeah.
It's really strange. They're very specific. They're just like Lebanon. We're totally sure it's Lebanon, everybody.
So I mean that speaks to a lot of other issues just regarding identity and how we're identified. Because again, some of these countries were not even countries, as you know. I'm preaching to the choir, but
Yeah,
yeah. So I'll just leave it there.
yeah,
But that's really a fascinating aspect of that story. And
yeah.
it connected with me just because I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and actually my mother was Anglo English and my father was Palestinian. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, English origins. And uh, everyone thought I was either Italian or that my parents were from Mexico because, the border. And my best friend's parents were from Mexico, and she was Mexican American. So people thought we were sisters. So I really related to the stealth era um, thing. And at that time, I mean, it was confusing to me too, as someone growing up within that. So I really relate to Mo Amer. Actually, I know that we could talk a whole lot about that as well, and women's representation and so on. But I did relate to some of the essence of what he was talking
Yeah.
about identities. Yeah. So, and I think the other thing I wanted to mention, you did give like an homage to Handela, the the cartoon character, I guess I'll call him,
Yes.
by Naji El Ali, and I just thought that was great, and
Thank
kind
you.
of drew a full circle for us. So yeah, there's just great stuff that I really connected with in the Hookah Girls. So
No, thank you so much. Yeah, I really I kind of also call the book Arab 101 because I feel like I'm touching on things that especially a lot of Palestinians are just like, oh yeah, rolling grape leaves. Oh yeah, like
yeah,
Bizzard. Oh yeah, like yeah, Hamdallah, like all these things that like we already kind of intrinsically know, but a lot of I feel like I primarily wrote this as for non-Arabs to be like, yeah, like we have these things that are you know different outside of other cultures, but still we're pretty much humans. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
like at the end of the day, we're all pretty much people, and it's all pretty much the same. It's just that we're celebrating our differences, and that's pretty much it.
yeah,
I know this is not uh, a mind altering thing to proclaim, but I feel like a lot of times people need to be reinforced this. And also, again, um, at the time, I felt like there was so little representation of anything Palestinian at all that I was like, I need to put something out there. I hadn't heard the only things that I had heard about um, Tachiz was from my own research.
mhm,
I mean, now it's just like, oh my god, we now have a senator who, like who wears thobe,
right.
um, but yeah, at the time it's just like I had my ratty old Palestinian costume book, and that was kind of it. And um,
That
so
was great that you mentioned that, because that was kind of like the forerunner of all that we are talking about now about Tatriz. So I thought that was great. And my last thing I'll mention is the eyebrow direction, because
oh my god, yeah.
yeah, I so related to that as well. So, yeah, so that was great. So I did ask if your work was autobiographical, but would you um, is there another way you'd like for it to be, or that you think you represent as well, such as um, fantasy, mythology, history? I think you're moving into fantasy a bit with Legends in the Heights.
Yeah. So right. So I did for Hookah Girl's definitely like semi-autobiographical. I mean, it depends on like reportage, autobio. Um, Legends of the Heights, I would say it's like urban fantasy. Um, and yeah, I still will occasionally write an autobio story. I'm not totally done with them. But um, it's, how can I say? There are but I still feel like a lot of my work they're still very personal to me. Like Legends of the Heights still has a lot of me in it, and there's the first page. Yeah, there's still a lot of me in it, and it's still I'm getting a lot of the stuff in it from my, it takes place in New York. It's where I am. A lot of it is just like a lot of my, what I feel like exuberance of, like, I like to put my own like kind of exuberance into it. It's I love, like I mentioned earlier, I love mythical creatures and legendary creatures, and so that's going to play a part in it. And so yeah, hopefully that it's hard. Honestly, I find the genre, it's hard for me to answer genres because I feel like it's I don't really think going and thinking what genre, like what genre my work is. I just like start making it, and then afterwards I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it's this.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go, actually. Just let your natural, self and natural ideas and rhythms, bring it to life. So, but I really love this as well, and I appreciate that you have a focus on female characters on both of the works we've talked about so far. But this I thought is really helpful. It just depicts, a young girl in school and some of the daily trials that she gets into. I don't know, are spoilers okay? Or I might bring up another couple of panels.
Yeah, whatever's up on the site, feel free to show.
Yeah.
I can't really get into too much what's not published on the
Sure.
site yet.
Yeah.
I will say that, well, if you,
Sure.
okay, so okay, so I will say basically that the plot is that the protagonist is Raya. She's a 12-year-old. She is half Palestinian and half Mexican. She lives in a neighborhood in Queens called Jackson Heights, and she's pretty typical. Like she just is, kind of this, like intelligent girl. She loves skateboarding, as you can see there, and she, hangs out. She has some pretty good friends. She's kind of a weirdo, like aren't we all? And and she just like befriends a Burak one day, and a Burak is a legendary creature that is in the Quran, and they don't really describe it very much in the Quran, but people have kind of made illustrations of it since. But so they're creatures that have bodies of a horse and a lion with big wings, and usually a face of a woman, and they have like peacock tails. Like usually that's how they're depicted. I think they're freaking amazing. Like I love them. And so I was really, when I was approached to do this comic from that's the Burak. Their name is Bazoo. And so they become friends. That's basically it. When I was approached by the company they just said, we want you to do a comic. We want it to be middle grade. Do whatever you want. It was like total blank slate. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. but I really wanted to do something that was going to plug in some kind of some sort of stories, folktales, something in Arab culture, Arab and Muslim culture. And genies are usually used. I feel like they're kind of overdone, and like I just wanted to do something that was different. I mean, genies are great. Like jinn are great. I have nothing against them, but I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do something. What appealed to me with the Borak was that they have this really wonderful feminine energy, and I really wanted to put that into a comic. And also, I was having difficulty finding some other creature that would be interesting to draw and to look at that would work, because there's sort of like a, there's a mirage, which is like it's like a rabbit with a horn, and I'm like, and then there's like the rock, which is a huge bird, and I'm like, not for a full-fledged comic, 3 times a week. So I landed on the Borak, and I love it. So basically, I have a trajectory where this is going to go, and I can't get too much into it, but I can say that their friendship is going to blossom, and we're going to hear more about Raya's time in school and dealing with friendships and just dealing with school stuff and trying to live in a world that thinks she's weird.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's great. I had a few other panels appear that I just personally appreciated, and I pulled one up earlier just of, I think it is, let's see, an overview of the Heights, if I have that right. Here. Or the Jackson Heights Queens. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like this. It's just a nice little, like, I know it's not a true quiet space, but I just love how the space is represented with all the buildings around it and the trees. And we get the sense of a community, and so that's her community, I guess.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed that. And then just how they met. Let me find that. Where I think she is saying, what is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Here, I think I've got that here too. Yeah, here it is. We've got just a hint of something going on here. So.
Yeah, I wanted it to kind of be this unceremonious, like, just appears. I also really wanted to make it clear that, Raya, there's no, I feel like there are a lot of stories where the protagonist is exceptional and exceptional things happen. I wanted to be clear that Raya she's not exceptional. She's a fantastic person, and she still like deserves love despite not being this exceptional person. And she's still like, her parents love her. She has this fantastic friend. She has a really good best friend, human best friend, and they get along really well. And I really wanted kids to read this and to say that, I don't need to melt metal with my eyeballs and fly in order to be deserving of love and friendship and things like that. And I also really wanted to put it in New York. I chose Jackson Heights specifically because it's one of the most, might still be the most, but it's one of the most diverse areas in the country. It's still certainly at least very, very diverse. And it was important to me to make her multiracial for obvious reasons. And just living here for so long, I feel like New York gets a really bad rap. And especially when you go out to the outer boroughs, when you're not just like in the middle of Manhattan, when I say middle of Manhattan, I mean like Midtown.
Mhm.
What's the neighborhoody parts of New York? I do. There is a certain community and neighborhoodiness to it that I don't feel like a lot of people who don't live here understand. So I really, it was important to me to put that in the comic.
Mhm. Yeah, I really felt like it was there in that slide I showed earlier, and now just how, so we've got the world building, and now we're also seeing the character in the world
Yeah.
and the mythical character in the world. And so that's just really cool.
Hmm.
So, and this was just another one. Her world seems to be becoming more colorful as she's meeting the Barak. So I thought that was kind of yeah. So I also had questions about. I think you've mentioned it in your bio. Your work on um, the Silk Road, which
Yes.
um, and I'm going to pull up your website if you don't mind. I'm not sure if anything is on there, but maybe you can show me. And if not, that's okay. But it's called your story is called A Voyage to Penjikent. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always had a big interest in Central Asia, and it's growing on me for some reason even more. For the reasons you mentioned about the opportunity for interaction and exchange, among peoples, and trade routes in general, I think are fascinating for that reason. Um, but yeah, so when I first saw that, I think it was during the Rawi convention that maybe either you had brought it up or somehow I became aware of it. But how are things working with that now? Are you still working on it? And I'm going to go ahead and pull up your website in general now. Not that Voyage to Penjikent is on here, or
Oh,
is it?
if you go to the top,
Oh,
it's
okay, good.
yeah, that link right there. I have some pages up there.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
yeah. So um
I'm going to hit
so
on here.
so that is a I'm trying to think of where to start with that because excuse me, I love that work. I love that comic. I don't know exactly how it's going to see the light of day.
Uh-huh.
Because okay, so and just to give an overview about what this comic is, so it's a comic I've been working on for a really long time, and it was sort of between. So before I started working, it was after I had done the Hookah Girl, and
Mhm.
I had, was trying to get it published, not really being successful. And also I was having these starts and stops with other comics and not being really successful with that for various reasons.
Mhm.
Which we might get into. I don't know. Um, I was just like, like I want to do something I really love. Okay, so I love history. I like it. So I'm gonna research a lot, and I like this. I love this time period. I'm such a sucker for things that don't have a lot of representation or
Mhm.
focus. And so I got wind of these people who lived during the Silk Road called the Sogdians, and so they were people who lived in what is now Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and so they were Zoroastrian. That was their religion, but they were like this not super. What's the word? They weren't like super tied to the Persian version of Zoroastrian. Like they would just sort of like uh, they would just sort of like take on other gods that they thought were really cool from China or
Mhm.
wherever. Like they were just like like this is a great god. We're gonna take this in whatever. They were very open about other cultures. They were right in the middle of the Silk Road, so they became these super skilled merchants because
Mhm.
that was where the I mean they were right there. So it was this. They became these like cash cows in regards to being these brokers between the East and West and of the Silk Roads, to the point that if at their height, if you wanted to become a merchant, you had to learn Sogdian. I mean, it's just amazing, and it's just like within U.S. context, I'd never heard of them, and they were so influential and so extremely powerful, and so that really excited me. So I decided I wanted to make this comic based on them, and it was a sort of thing where it's this overarching story, but it's historical, so you'll indirectly learn stuff about Sogdians by reading this comic where I did all this research and stuff. And I actually got pretty far. I'm like pretty far in the comic. I have it all inked, and I have a good chunk of it colored, like more than half of it colored. The issue is money, honestly, because it was another project where I tried to find agents for it. I tried to find a publisher for it, and the interest is just not there. It's another project where I would need to self-publish it and everything. And honestly, like it's mentally draining. I had all the hoopla with the Hookah girl. It tired me out. Mm-hmm. And also, like I've had health conditions over the past few years, so I don't have as much energy as I used to. So that makes it more difficult. And I actually did kickstart it, and it was successful, but it was just enough to publish it. And I ultimately gave the Kickstarter money back to people because I was just like, I don't know when I'm going to get this done. I feel bad holding people's money, so I'm just going to do that. So it's sort of like in this limbo where I'm sort of like, okay, I'm working on it extremely slowly when I have time, and I want to bring it out in some way because I have so much of it done. But it's it's going to be, it's the baby that makes absolutely no money whatsoever. But I love it. Like, I love the comic. Like, if you don't mind clicking on one of the pages,
sure.
Get a better idea of the detail. I mean, it's just like I really poured a lot into it. Thank you. Yeah. So it's
oh, good. Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. So it's like I poured a lot into it. I colored it like crazy. It's digital, but it's like a faux watercolor effect, and I purposely did that because I wanted it to look like the like Chinese Tang Dynasty pottery, where there was that sort of that glaze. Like, they were very liberal with colors at the time, so they liked everything to run, and so I really wanted it to have kind of that effect of like watercolor has that effect. So these were all purposeful choices. And and I really wanted to make clear that the colors of the clothing, those were colors that Sogdians actually wore. Like, they wore these really bright colors. A lot of times when people think of the past, they think of these really like dusty old colors, because when we see stuff now, that's looks old to us because it's actually old, so we think that it's actually like those are the original colors, when they're not. They're actually super colorful and bright and beautiful. Like, so yeah, that's what I'm at.
Well, my interest was first sparked because I work at a community college, and we had a speaker come from Indiana University to talk about Muslim women in the Central Asian republics.
Okay.
And that's what got me hooked. So I even wonder if there's some grant money or something there through Indiana University, because I could see this as like, even a middle grade history around the world type of thing, or I don't know what audience you're thinking of, but I mean, I love it now. I learned from it now.
No, thank you. Yeah, the audience is primarily is like a young adult,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, it's young adult indirect learning. Yeah, I it's thank you. Yeah,
I'm pulling up a few other panels.
yeah. What can I say? Like I love it. It's another. It was another lesson for me, honestly, that comics are really hard to crack. I mean, I really, I very much lucked out with Legends of the Heights in that they're very trusting of me, and I'm able to work on this stuff, and they don't shy away from. I don't want to even say it's challenging material because I don't find it challenging to me, but I mean they don't shy away. Like I can say Palestinian, and they don't shy away from that. I have you know um, Raya's mother speaks Arabic, and I have it translated. That kind of thing. Like they're not.
That's great.
Yeah, they're not being precious about that. I've had very difficult issues with publishers with this, unless it has to be like super overt, like World War III illustrated levels of, I can't do this like more subtle, what's the word? Like more subtle social commentary, which is more of my style. Like I'm not so much of a banner. Like I like the subtlety to be able to speak to more people.
Yeah. No, I understand. So I've gotten more interested in indie fiction, especially fantasy and sci-fi. I've started to read a lot more, and I just wonder, my impression is that indie published comics have been around for much longer, or am I just late to the game? I'm probably late to the game. um, uh, so, because when you're talking about publishers, I'm thinking major, New York publishers with agents and everything. But
Mhm.
do you mean smaller publishers as well, or indie publishers, or?
Sure. When I'm talking about publishers, I do mean both. I mean, indie publishers. So they have been around. They've been around for a while. I would say they really started becoming um, more financially stable. I'll say in the
Mhm.
90s, um, and and nowadays there are some pretty reasonably sizable ones,
Mhm.
and though and those publishers you would not need an agent to approach them.
Mhm.
Uh, but also because of that, in my experience, their slush pile is very very huge. Like it's very 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 huge, and a lot of them are very particular with what they want and what they're interested in, that kind of thing. Um, and it's honestly it, in my experience, like for example, I brought this comic, not to name, I'm not going to name names, but I brought that comic to an agent who did speak to me over the phone, and they were like, well, I really like the story, and it's very like it's a very feminist story also, which I don't know, you can't see so much
Which this
pun.
one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a feminist story. So they're like, well, it's really feminist. I really like that's really great. But with the art style, can you just make it look more like blank 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 famous cartoonist? And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah, and I was like, no, I
Because you want to be yours. Yeah.
and it's also that, I mean, it's not the point. I mean, I have all these reasons why it looks like it does, and I know it doesn't look bad. It's like I'm at the point of my career that I know, like I know that there are things that I can improve, and I know that I'm not the virtuoso godsend of art or anything like that, but I know that my art is accomplished enough that my art can possibly sell things. So it's a little frustrating.
Yeah, and I think this is beautiful. So, I mean,
Thank you.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, but I know everything is tough and there's all kinds of considerations and context and all of that. Um, but it's all good. And I'm going to bring Legends of the Heights up one more time. I've actually put the links to where to purchase the Hookah Girl, and where to find Legends of the Heights, and also your website address in the bio under the YouTube video. Now I want to find the starting point. Well, actually, I'll share this fun one because this is the first time they meet, right?
Yes.
Or fully meet, yeah.
Fully meet, not just the tail.
Yeah, not just the tail. So yeah, that's great. So I'll leave that here for a moment. But yeah, for those watching, um, feel free to follow the link and check out the comic. Um, we've talked a little bit about this, but I did want to ask what your greatest challenge has been as a comics illustrator, and what is your favorite part of the creative process?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let me think about that for a sec. So, I think for both, honestly, I'm going to say it's perseverance. So the challenge side of that is, this is such a long game. I mean, so this type of art, it's like there are no immediate returns. It's like a continual. Sometimes I feel like I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall. It's like, does this work? Does this work? And so that can be definitely a challenge to wait and see what works, what doesn't, that kind of thing. But then the positive is when something does work, like either personally, I'm just like, I'm getting so like I feel so great because I created this thing, or I'm talking to someone who is really getting a lot of enjoyment out of this work, or they're getting something out of it that I was hoping for, and I'm able to communicate. That is one of the best things, because honestly, the reason why I chose to work in this medium is because for me it is the easiest communication tool for me. It's I could have writing, like you probably feel the most comfortable writing, and it's just something about the words and pictures together for me that it just clicks for me. It clicks very well, and it is really great when I feel like someone understands the work.
Yeah, I get that. I do. And so, who are some artists who have inspired you?
So, so I, okay, so I, I like video games, as you can probably tell from my wall. These are all video games over here.
Oh yeah.
So we have a few. So one artist who has greatly influenced me for a long period of time was Yoshitaka Amano. So he started out, for a long time. He was a character designer and illustrator for the Final Fantasy series, but what really drew me to his work was it's very decorative, and I have this thing about decorative work that also tells a story that I really feel his work does. It's very expressive, And also, previously, I feel like there was sort of this idea of like, it's just video game art or whatever, just like bleep bloop, whatever. And here comes this guy who comes with this like super amazing, detailed, beautiful, eye-popping work, and just made me realize, like, you don't have to be beholden to other people's opinions of what something should be. So me wanting to get into comics, it made me realize that I don't have to make this whatever people think comics are. I can make this whatever I want. Like, there really isn't any boundary. And so that was a really important lesson for me. And I would say Amano kind of nudged me in that direction. So
okay, that's great. I something else has just occurred to me. I want to ask, when you've mentioned writing, you're a writer as well in the copy that you provide in your comics and elsewhere, because Ballady has published you before. And so I'm assuming that word choices are much more important in the small space you have for text. And I noticed in A Voyage to Panjikant, it seemed like you've provided more background information, I guess. I can't remember. Yeah. But then in Legends of the Heights, it's more about text that's moving the story along and helping us get to know the characters.
Yeah.
So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that. Do you make conscious choices, or do you feel that you know what you're going to draw and say at the same time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do feel like I've gotten to a point where the drawings and writing come organically and pretty simultaneously. And regarding Panjikant, it's sort of rooted in that idea of, I do want people to learn some things about, overview about Sogdian culture while reading this. So there is some of that, but I also made the conscious effort of having people speak, I didn't want to throw in these and thous and make it sound old, like this old fashioned language. Like I did want to make it sound relatively smooth. So, they're not really, they're not really slangy, but they're it's still pretty modern English. And that was a very conscious, that was like, I stewed on that for a bit and decided on that. And in Legends of the Heights, something that I don't think, I didn't realize until I started drawing the different types of comics, the serialized 4-panel comic that I do on Legends, it's a different pacing and a different long game than my other comics. And so I need to think about the dialogue differently and how I present the work and how I present the characters and things like that. So I try to, that's probably the biggest word balloon in the entire thing so far. So pacing becomes super important, as does how the characters talk. Like, I actually have a sheet where I break down the personalities of the main characters, and I have some terminology that they use so that I know, like, okay, like, this is something Bazu would never say, and then here's some stuff, like, this is how they would say certain things and how they would talk, and their turns of phrases and things like that. And that also really, like, words are a way to develop the characters in this indirect kind of way. That is, you have to just be so economical with those 4 panels that it's very important to find a new way.
I'm even thinking deeper about this now that you've explained that. I can see how it's even more important than I realized. So, wow, that's great. So I just have one last question for you. What advice do you have for others who want to become involved in developing and participating in creating illustrations and comics.
Okay, so love what you're doing. I mean, that's really the biggest thing. Do it because you love it and love what you're doing, and you know, and if it, like, honestly, I think that if you love what you're doing, it's, you know, there's always going to be rough patches in anything that you do. Anything, it doesn't matter. There are going to be rough patches. There are going to be great, fantastic times. You know, if you enjoy it, no matter what, it's going to make it worth it.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, you know, that's what helps keep us hanging on is, you know, to the work is loving the work.
Yeah.
So. Well, this is wonderful. Do you have any additional things you'd like to say? Something you'd like to add?
I think this is pretty good. I hope, I would love if people read the comic. If they go to the Go Comics website, yeah, you said you added a link, so
yes.
Just go to the site and you can read the comic. You can read Legends in the Heights for free on the site. That helps. That just checking out the site, that helps me out. And also, if you happen to like the comic, that's even better. So please check it out. It is free to do so.
Okay. Well, Marguerite Dabaie, thank you so much for joining us today. And
thank you.
Maybe we'll have you back another time to talk about some of your future work. So,
I'm down. Thank you so much, Layla. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.